need a holiday is what she said to me. I need to get away from you. And as I watched her lying next to me, I wished for a holiday too. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. Home is where the heart is. I wanna be there, yeah, yeah.
Hi there, my name's Aaron Short. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is Wednesday. It's a different day for me. Wednesday, February the 21st. And today we have a very special additional show. Usually we go live on Mondays and do an open Q&A about guitars and gear. And today we've added a live stream. These live streams, depending on the popularity of this, may be more regular. And the reason we're adding this one is it's very special. To give you some background, when I was at the NAMM show recently, I was talking quite a lot with Lloyd Baggs, really great guy, really generous with his time. And I asked him many questions about guitars because as well as making acoustic guitar pickups, Lloyd is also a luthier, which you would know if you saw the interview I had with him during the lockdown. We talked about that. And one of the questions I asked him was, which guitar builders or luthiers do you respect in the industry? And he thought about it, and then the name he gave me was Isaac Jang. And he told me that he was over in the NAMM show, not far from his booth, at the, what's it called? It's called the Boutique Guitar Showcase, where many boutique builders join together to show off their guitar builds. So when I was live streaming around NAMM, I ran into Isaac, and I remember the name, and he was there, and the guitars looked amazing. And then I'm pretty sure, pretty randomly, Lloyd walks over and we all have a nice conversation. And then I watched the live stream back later on, and people were saying that Isaac is awesome. They love his guitars and they're so glad that we ran into each other. So I just had the idea after the craziness of NAMM, because it's too loud there. It's very hard to talk. It's very hard, especially hard to try guitars. So I invited Isaac on to talk about his guitar builds on the live stream. Now I still can't actually play the guitars, but at least it's quiet and we can talk about his background. We can see his shop. We can ask him questions. So today is going to be a live. This is live right now. If you're watching, we really appreciate it. Do me a favor, share this with your friends, family, guitar playing friends, or anyone actually, because the great thing with these kind of live streams is they do get a little bit kind of a little bit technical and geekery at times, but it's more about getting to know the people and asking the questions about their life and their thoughts on the things that they do. It's more accessible kind of information than we have on a Monday for sure. So please invite some people along. I'm going to do the first half of this as a kind of interview, and then I'm going to invite you to ask questions. In fact, start typing your questions now, and I'll filter through those in the second half of the live stream and present them to Isaac. So before we get started, I'm just going to say hi to everyone that's here early. I really appreciate your support. So formerly known as T is here already and gave us a question. I'm going to save that for later on, T, okay? That is a great question, and I'll save that for the second half. So if I don't ask it, please do feel free to remind me later on when I get to that section. And he says hello to Isaac. And then Derek is here. And Derek is in southern Spain. That's awesome. I'm in New York City. Isaac is out west in California. Derek's in Spain. Bernard Smith is here from Suffolk, UK. Mad for It Manchester is, believe it or not, in Manchester, right? We decided that on Monday. Great to see you here. Patsy Smith also in the UK. And Rosanna's here. And that blue spanner means that she's moderating. Really appreciate that as always, Rosanna. So she's going to take care of the chat while I'm busy talking to Isaac. So that's awesome. So feel free to say hi in the chat. But right now, let's go over and meet Isaac. I'm going to bring him on without any further ado. So 1 second. Isaac, how you doing?
Hey, Aaron. How are you? Good to see you. And hello, everyone who's joining us.
Yeah, this is amazing because I literally ran into you at the NAMM show, right? And yeah. I saw the guitars and we chatted so briefly. And then the comments, the feedback on that part of the live stream, and that live stream was so like off the cuff, and the cell phone reception was terrible at NAMM, but it was really cool because I just got to meet loads of people in the space of like an hour or two. And loads of people said on that video, it's Isaac. They all knew who you were. They knew the guitars. And so I just had to talk to you some more. And this is great because at least we can hear ourselves think on a live stream like this.
Yeah, well, that's great. No, I'm very grateful for that.
No, we're grateful for your time. And before we get started, just tell me actually, because a lot of people have been talking about NAMM and how successful it was. So, just in your opinion, the actual NAMM show itself, was it worthwhile? What are your thoughts on that? Will you be going again? Have you been before? What do you think about the NAMM show in 2024?
Yes, 100% worth it for me, because I live in LA. I live about an hour away from the venue, and I've exhibited there at the Boutique Guitar Showcase for about past 5 years, or fifth time, my time of exhibiting for the show, when they first started in 2017, I believe. Uh, and for me, it's the way for me to connect with everyone in the music industry, and another platform for me to showcase my guitar in person, because the guitar itself is more than just the photos or the sound clips. It's the whole experience. So even though it's loud and it's chaotic, it's still the best place for me to bring the work, and then people who come there can actually see it in person and at all different angles under different lights, and just at least feel the instrument, and it gives a better idea. And for the business wise, I've always had a great success, because I don't really build that many guitars. I only build like 6 or 7 guitars a year. So it's usually for me to showcase the work, but sometimes if I have something that I like to showcase or premiere, I can also do it at the show. And in which case, this year I did.
I agree. For me, NAMM, with what I do with the YouTube channel, obviously it's about the networking and the people. And like I mentioned, I spent a lot of time with Lloyd talking about different things. So yeah, it's definitely about the people. And like you said, with you, the great thing with you is you're the builder, and you were there, and the guitars were there. And so you get that whole experience. When you meet the person behind the guitar itself and you see the guitars, like I said, you can't really play them and appreciate them sound-wise at a trade show, but you can see them and get and talk to you, the person that made it. And that's what I love about it. I love meeting the people behind the equipment. And like you meet Lloyd and ask him about his pickups that he makes, and you meet Larry Fishman, ask him to tell you a story about his history starting in the industry. And you meet the people at Martin that designed the new guitars that are coming out. You get to actually ask those direct questions and meet the people behind the products that you never really get to meet, maybe on something like this, like we're doing today. But to have everyone together in one place like that is really cool. I just wonder, like, from a business perspective, how worthwhile it is. And I guess it depends on the person. Someone, I could understand why Fender aren't. I think it's a shame, but I understand why Fender aren't going and putting that money into other kinds of promotion. And but I also guess it depends on what your product is and how long you've been doing it, and who your customers are as well, right? So I think it's great though that the builders get together. I'd seen the Boutique Guitar Showcase before, but I mostly went there because my friend Evan knows a lot of guys there, and because Lloyd said to check it out, that's why I walked through there, and I saw some awesome guitars and builds there. So I think NAMM is amazing, and I hope that it long continues. But let's start by talking about you. If you wouldn't mind, can we just start let's start with your background, like where you from and what your first experiences with music, because it's amazing to me. A lot of people I've met build guitars. And some people don't play guitar. Some people do play guitar. So I'm gonna cut to you, and if you wouldn't mind, just tell us about your history in your life, if you don't mind.
Where I come from and how to get all started.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm originally from South Korea. I was born and raised in Busan until I was 12, and I moved to LA with my family. and basically spent rest of my life here, until still, by now. So so when I first came here, I barely spoke any English, and I started to learn about the music culture, and through a local church that I attended, I picked up a guitar, and it's just sort of everything intrigued me. I didn't really have a musical background from my family, but it's something that I was just curious about, and so the whole guitar, getting started with guitars, was my first sort of encounter of the actual work in itself. But I think towards and when I started high school, I'm sorry, maybe I'm a little nervous being in the live with you here. When I started going to high school, I met a guitar teacher. We had a guitar class, and I just completely fell in love with it. And I just wanted to be around guitars for whatever it was about, like whether it was playing guitars or whether it was listening, whether it was for uh, you know, working on guitar was really not uh, an option or that I knew of. So I just wanted to keep playing guitars, and that was sort of my first love for it. And I think towards end of my high school years, I was introduced to this video clip, and this gentleman who was playing acoustic guitar, uh, but he was playing it more like an electric guitar, and it's just like the whole playing style just intrigued me, and I was like, "Whoa, acoustic guitar could really sound like that!" And turned out that was Tommy Emmanuel, whom later I had an honor of being able to tag for him a few occasions, and so that was sort of like the eye-opening experience with acoustic guitars, and I just got curious about the sound of the acoustic guitars. So I started to just do my online research, and that was back in 2005, 2006. And I found a local guitar maker, and also turned out to be like one of the legendary guitar makers, and her name was Kathy Wingert. And I reached out to her, and she was maybe about an hour away from where I lived, and said, "Hey, my name is Isaac. I am interested in making acoustic guitars. Could you teach me?" And of course, like just being like, 17 years old, 18 years old kids, like, not knowing anything about the whole trade, but she was very gracious in responding to me, telling me that like I don't accept apprentices because I just don't have enough time and space for it. But if you're interested in learning about the work, here's what I suggest. And she said, you need to have gone to guitar making school, have built a guitar. You also have to be working in the repair shop because that's the real critical part of guitar making. You have to learn how to do good setup. You need to do how to look at all the good finish touches on the guitar. And then you're just like 18, you're just out of high school. What are you doing? You need to be back in college. So I took that advice and took some time off, served at a restaurant, saved up for tuition, went to a guitar making school called Gallup Guitars of Luthier, where I spent 2 months full time and learned how to make an acoustic guitar. And that was just more like a foundation of how everything worked. So it was a great experience, short but really packed with information. And then I came back and I found myself in a repair position in Hollywood. And then I re-enrolled back into college, and I reached out to Kathy and I said, "Hello, Kathy. I don't know if you remember me from about a year ago. My name is Isaac. We spoke, and I went to guitar making school. I finished two guitars. I'm working in the repair shop. I am back into college. Is it okay if I come and show you my guitars? And I just want to get your critique." So I went and showed up, and she asked if I had time to work for her. So that's kind of how my apprenticeship began with Kathy, and I did a part-time apprenticeship. So I went there twice a week, and I uh, apprenticed for her for 10 years before I finished my apprenticeship. And then during that 10 years, I was working in a repair shop at Westwood Music. I was teaching at a Musicians Institute. We had a Guitar Craft Academy program where I taught guitar making, and I was building my own guitars, and I had set up my own shop during that phase as well. So um, I owe big uh, debt to Kathy, and now it's been about uh, 17 years. I'm entering into my 17th year as a guitar maker, uh, and of that 11 years under my own name, and I'm just building here by myself, one-man operation in my shop here in LA.
That's a great story. I'm so glad you shared that with us. So you did
Yep.
come at it as a player, and
Yes.
then you wanted to build them, and you just went straight in like, hey, I want to build guitars. I love that. I think we do that when I know I did it when I was younger. I was writing songs like, hey, I've written a song, and you just hand it to someone. You have that. I think when you're young, you can have that kind of confidence, right? You just want to do something,
Hmm.
and it sounds like that. But then you also, took the initiative to actually go out and get the experience, and then come back again, and then go. It's absolutely. I really want to ask you. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to, because I don't like this question. But how old are you?
I am 36, turning 37 this year.
Right, because you've done so much. When I think of someone that builds guitars, this is obviously this is the wrong thing, but I just think of someone. No, I can't say it. I was going to say, well, I think of someone older. You looked
Uh-huh.
young, but you've just started so young, and I think that's
Hmm.
amazing because. Well, then again, maybe not. I mean, we had Daisy Tempest on here, and
Hmm.
she started young too. I think I'm just not used to this world. I spend a lot of time
Hmm.
talking about, the legacy brands on my channel. And it's amazing.
Hmm.
It's amazing to hear someone started and is so passionate about building guitars. And you saw that at NAM as well. There's so many builders. We've got more coming on the channel, and I hope to have get exposure for a lot more people and learn
Hmm.
myself as well. Because, like I said, I'm guilty of talking a lot about Martin, and that's not to say
Hmm.
that they don't have young people working there as well, right? Of course,
Hmm.
but you've just what I'm trying to say is I'm ranting here. You've done so much and you did it so well. You just wanted to do it. You had the passion and you wanted to do it, and that's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, now that I think of it, I never really thought of that angle until I'm now looking at some other younger builders coming up.
Mm.
It's kind of funny I say that. But I realized I did sort of start right out of high school, and I guess I just wasn't interested in any other stuff too much to explore a lot. I'm sort of the type to when I get into one thing, I just kind of go all out, and uh, and I think that's just probably what had happened is
Yeah,
I was just
you've got
yeah.
that personality. Yeah, yeah. But I was just thought of a question while you were talking. So had you like were you into repairing and building other stuff? And you hear about like amp builders. They say, well, I used to take apart my dad's
Mhm.
stereo and rebuild it, and we fix his car together. Had you done other um? Had you built other things before? Was the guitar the first thing? Like, what were you into building furniture or something before you got into building guitars?
No, I didn't really have any woodworking experience, nor any other technical stuff. I mean, I always knew I liked working with hands, but I didn't really have any backgrounds in that type of environment of makers. So my real experience really started out at the guitar making school, and I think because I'm building guitars because I like guitars. Otherwise, I would probably be making violins and other instruments, but I just don't have interest in that.
And are you still actively playing now, or are you all about the building? Do you do both, or?
Not as much as I like to. When I worked in the repair shop, I had more experience, I mean, more chance to play guitars. But now that my hands are really tied up in just like, carving, sanding, gluing, my hands are just kind of at the point where if my hands are not moving, I'm not really getting work done. So I'm trying to set aside some time, maybe every week or so, just to kind of keep it going. So I like to play some fingerstyle, jazz, and blues type of things, uh, but not as much as I like to.
Mm. Yeah, I just wonder, like, do people build guitars because they couldn't find a guitar that they liked, and therefore they're
Mhm.
going to build the instrument that they want to exist, or do people just want to create guitars? Like I guess there's everyone's different. Everyone comes at it from a different angle, and at the same time, I'm sure people are going to ask you later on how you choose the materials that you use. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna assume that some of that is influenced a little bit from um like when you did your kind of
Mhm.
what's the
Apprenticeship.
word? The apprenticeship, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Has that influenced the way you now build your guitars, or did you move in a different direction? And how do you even decide, like, I'm going to use mahogany or rosewood, or what kind of rosewood, and how do you even make
Mhm.
those decisions with the building process?
So a lot of the good things that I'm applying to my work all comes from Kathy, and having spent 10 years, I haven't really picked up only the technical aspect of it, but more like the whole thought process and the approach to guitar making. So a lot of the sort of my selection process comes from my training. So the way I approach things is a lot with a lot of my senses, and I like to listen to the material, wood, because it's ultimately the human ear that's going to hear the sound of the guitar. So I like to listen to the wood, and I have a lot of communication with my clients of their playing style and what they're listening for. And because the the sort of the every age has a different hearing frequency limitations, I also take that into consideration, and also hearing about what their favorite instrument that they play right now, and using those reference points, I just go ahead and go through my wood pile and listen and carefully choose them. And my building approach always has been wood centric, meaning I like the wood to be the celebrity, and I like the wood to make its own uh, sound. And I'm more like a facilitator as a guitar maker. So I sort of design and make the guitar, but in the end, if the ingredient isn't ready or ingredient isn't the right purposes, then it wouldn't deliver the full potential of what I'm going for, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, well, I'm again. I apologize for sounding ignorant, but I do come from the world of, like, talking a lot about Martin and all those brands. And when you
Hmm.
do their factory tour, they do say that. I mean, first of all, they're making all those guitars, right? So they
Hmm.
can't sit there and individually go through each piece of wood. They say that
Hmm.
they pick wood that looks similar to match.
Hmm.
They do check it for imperfections. But the thing I hear a lot about talking to builders like yourself is that it's more
Hmm.
about being specific. I mean, obviously, because if you're making one guitar at that time, you're more
Hmm.
focused on what wood am I going to use exactly, and you can be much more specific about the actual piece of wood that you're
Hmm.
using, right? It's a very different approach to buying something from a Guitar Center where there's just thousands of the same model. And even then, I always say I believe all guitars sound very different. Like the wood, definitely sounds different. And you're able to go in there and say, right, I'm going to use this piece of wood. And also, I presume if you're not making tens of thousands of guitars, you can also get those woods that those builders can't use in mass production. Like, I assume you could work with Brazilian rosewood and things like that, right?
Yes. And because everything I make is highly customized for each client, uh, and I uh, I just get to spend all the time in the world. And because my time I spend on the guitar is more valuable than the material cost itself, uh, it really, at some point, the cost of the material doesn't become as relevant as the time that I spend on the guitar, if that makes sense. And
Mm.
because I can do it, I do it. In a lot of the bigger production settings, there's you still have to work through the logistics and work through the schedule in a way. I'm not so good at my time management, but I know that if I think about other factors, then it'll sort of change my. I'm afraid that it'll change my approach to things. So I prefer to just really stick with the my work quality and what I'm trying to achieve in my work become my highest priority, and the time I get to spend on it, it's sort of like I'm already spending 3 months to build a guitar. What more is it going to change? So I'm just spending as much uh, attention to every facet and detail of instrument as I could.
Are you
So it's
working on
not the
one at a time? Sorry.
oh, so it's not the best way to make a profitable guitar, but
Mm,
I'm doing it because that's my passion, and it's an obsession. It's sort of like I can't help but to. Um, and typically, I work to answer your question. I sometimes do work on one or two, um, and sometimes I sort of process some parts in a group that doesn't require me to put as much as attention. But typically, one or two is sort of what I feel comfortable working
mm.
at each time. So that way, it gives me sort of a better workflow in that way. So like if glue is drying, I can work on the other, and also gives me some understanding of how those two differ. But it's kind of wild, even with the same species, you know, even from the same board, they could sound different. And I've experienced that. And I don't, my, what I'm thinking as my entire lifetime output, if I build like 500 guitars in my entire life, that's probably what Taylor could build in a day.
Mm. But it's a
So,
completely different. It's completely different. I got to share this. Like I was watching Martin Guitar have been posting more on their YouTube channel lately, and they've just done a
mhm,
factory tour. And lots of people have done some factory tour videos recently, but this one is quite specific, and it highlights things that I had no idea about. Like
mhm,
it really shows the amount of CNC and lasers and basically like I would say, in my opinion, 70 to 80% of the process now is automated. Now they have to
mhm,
do that. I understand that because they're making guitars for the whole world. They have, people there on the phone, like where are the guitars? We need to sell them and make money. It's a business. I get it. But a
mhm,
lot of, I mean, Taylor started with the whole CNC thing, right? And
mhm,
the adjustable necks. Martin have gone into, I mean, everyone has to go into that when they're making those kind of numbers. I'm not knocking them for it. And actually, I think there's
mhm,
a good side to that. I think a robot can make something very consistently and
mhm,
cleanly, and sometimes that could actually be. I guess that's why Taylor got into it. They were saying, well, it's actually good for the process because it can
mhm,
do things that would be very hard for a person to do. And I get that, but I wanted to ask you, like, with you're obviously in the workshop right now. Is everything that you do by hand? Do you have any kind of robotic tools or anything, or is that a silly question, or is everything handmade when you make a guitar?
My most advanced tool that I have is probably my Bluetooth connected vacuum.
I got excited there. I was waiting for you to say you had a CNC machine.
No, I don't have CNC. I have basic woodworking tools. So I'm just looking through my shop here. I have multiple bandsaws, drum sander, belt sander, drill press, and the router table. I think that's about it. I mostly um, it's all done by hand, uh, and then with the help of the basic woodworking power tools. Uh, and I think because my first shop in Hollywood was very small. It was 180 square feet, and I had to adapt to that sort of workflow. So I just started incorporating using hand tools a lot more, even before than now. you know, a lot of Japanese saws, chisels, gouges, scrapers, and I've gotten used to it, and I feel like it's, you know, I could get things faster that way too, and I'm having more fun doing it. And I don't really see discounting the work of CNC because I see some of those technology is incredible. It's precise, and especially most of my colleagues who use CNC, they can already do the work by hand that get the quality. So it's not that they're depending on it for the quality, but rather for the efficiency and probably for the you know, like a, you know, just for the long term stability on that things. So you know, from what I've seen, I can, yeah, I don't really discount the CNC work. It's that it's the choice of each maker to do what they like to do. I personally like to have fun with those, just using hand tools and just making it by my hand with my hand, and that's the real reason why I started uh, building
But
guitars. So
it's amazing. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take us over to the website. I've put a link to your website in the chat, so later on people can click through and read and look at all the pictures in detail. But I'm going to just jump over there right now with you on the screen, and if you could just talk through like the pictures that I show, what the woods are, and any challenges or things that are interesting about each picture. But the reason I think I came to that question is your guitars look so. I mean, obviously you're building one guitar, so again I'm not discounting what Martin or Taylor or Fender are doing, and it does have its plus side, but the fact that you're building these by hand 100% and they look that accurate, for want of a better word, it just really amazes me. Like, you know, the precision of I just can't even, but you know, I mean, I'm not a guitar builder. I can't even build IKEA furniture, but you know, it just amazes me that the accuracy and precision that you can achieve by hand. So again, you know, let's jump over and look at them because some people in the chat may not have seen them yet. So this is your website here. So yeah, can you tell us like what this guitar is, what the top wood is, and anything you remember about building it?
Yes, that is my OM with the Adirondack spruce top with Brazilian rosewood back and sides. And if you look at it, there are two. My whole approach is to build a guitar that is simple yet elegant, and that's kind of my sort of philosophy. Is when I first started out, I didn't want to come out with all the bells and whistles because I didn't want that to be the distracting factor for the sound of my guitar. So I came in and with a more rather simple design, but wanted to make sure that the focus of the guitar is the sound. And then from there, I evolved and tried to put more accents and different decorative features to it. So this guitar, some of the features you'll see is my sound hole rosette is completely bound, but it's actually not a bound in a traditional sense that glue a piece of bent round wood to the grain side of the sound hole, but rather it's a joinery. So if you look from the underside, it's got a step and it sort of locks it in place so that it's fully secured and it stiffens the sound hole. That allows the bass response to give a little bit more focused sound, and that's what I sort of do on all my guitars. So it's actually more stable, and it gives that reinforced sound. And if you look at the cutaway, it's what I call an Uchida style bendaway. That design comes from a incredible guitar maker named Miki Uchida, and he's in Japan. And he was very gracious when I first started out to let me use his design on my guitars. And that's just like a one aspect of it, but like his work is incredible. If you just look him up, he's an old school. He was a manager at like a shop manager at Loudon Guitars in the 80s.
Oh,
But he
really?
moved to Japan, and he's doing like 3 or 4 guitars a year, and every single guitar that he's making is all different. So he's like a whole another level. And so that what you see over there in the front is sort of like a pseudo cutaway. So it's not really a full cutaway in that it doesn't have a scoop, but it's actually overbent to the side with a twist. You can't really tell from the front, but if you look at it from the side view, you'll actually see that where the neck joins is sort of bent, and the line you see over there is a little bevel with the accent. So
Are these all the
that's what
same
it is.
guitar, or are these different guitars on the website?
They're different. They're different guitars, but that kind of shows a little bit of that. So yeah, that you can kind of see it from the front. You see that the cutaway area is not fully perpendicular, but rather it's got a twist going on there.
Yeah,
And then if you look,
it's amazing. Is that cosmetic or is it functional?
it's functional and it's also cosmetic, but the whole idea is because you need that little room at the extra axis. So I sort of put that over there, but the whole idea is to get the as little change into the full body shape as possible. So you get the full sound of a non-cutaway guitar, but still have a benefit of doing a cutaway upper frets axis.
Right, you just mentioned something I was going to ask you. I was thinking, I'm going to go a bit technical now and geekery. So
Yes.
let's address some things. Again, this is just our opinion. This is just my opinion, your opinion. But let's talk a little bit about some things. So, okay, forums. People that say the cutaway affects. Now, I know this is the answer from everyone. Everything you do to a guitar affects the sound. I know that. But in your opinion, like from building these guitars, when you add a cutaway, what does it do? Obviously, if you need one, if you need to play a solo up there, you need a cutaway. But sound-wise, how do you feel adding a cutaway affects the guitar sound?
What it does, and just getting into the scientific sort of understanding of things, is that it reduces the air volume resonance of the guitar body. But how does that translate into the sound of the guitar? And I think that's really kind of questionable, and it's really difficult to build exact same guitar that would sound exactly the same and do the A/B comparison unless I can take the exact new guitar and then make a temporary cutaway and then sort of put that in and out and then change and hear how it sounds. So it's very difficult for me to put numbers on it, so I kind of see that more like a psychological effect. So I just call it a psychological cutaway or non-cutaway guitar or pseudo cutaway, because what I find is everything on the guitar is cumulative to the sound of an instrument. So it's kind of a percentage adds up to what the guitar sounds like ultimately. And most of the builders that I know that I respect, I believe that they can sort of control things so that really it doesn't affect the sound of the instrument when they put the cutaway or not. And I often put cutaway on my guitars too. So it's, if I do a blind test on a guitar with cutaway or without the cutaway, I don't know if I would be able to tell the difference right away. And I've heard, some of the best guitars that I played all had cutaways. So,
one thing that I was thinking recently, because I was on the forums years ago too, saying these things. Oh, a cutaway, obviously, cutting away a part of the guitar. You put an undersaddle pickup, you're affecting the vibrations through the bridge. You put stainless steel frets on, they sound brighter. I used to get into all that kind of thing, and for me, like, the ultimate goal was just a big non-cutaway old Martin or something, right? And that was like the dream. But what I've come to realize recently, very recently, is that sometimes these things are good. Like maybe in a certain guitar, when you add these things, it actually improves the sound. No one really thinks about that side of it. Everyone's just got this kind of end goal of this old vintage Gibson or something in their mind, but no one thinks that maybe you can have too much of a good thing, or a guitar may sound better. And then of course it's impossible to really compare two guitars because the wood again is different, right? You can't have the same guitar exactly the same. But Yeah, I always tell people with a cutaway, like, hey, if you play up there, get a cutaway. If you don't play up there and you don't like how it looks, then don't get one, right?
Right. And I think also, theoretically, non-cutaway guitar will give you more of that body resonance that people could claim. But yeah, like you said, it could really just vary depending on the playing style, what the end goal is for the guitar.
Well, I think a lot of guitar, I know for me as well, a lot of this stuff is psychological, and it's just,
Mhm.
what we like. And some people just want to feel that their guitar doesn't have a cutaway, like they feel it will sound
Mhm.
better. And I think that's valid too. I think that, I mean, that's why some people want to play an electric guitar that says Fender on the headstock. It just psychologically gives them something
Mhm.
that another guitar from a different builder that maybe isn't technically as good doesn't give them. So I'm not discounting that, and I certainly have that. If people watch my channel, they know I have all that as well. But I think it's
Yeah.
great to actually talk to someone that actually makes guitars and ask them
Mhm.
what their thoughts are, rather than just discussing it on the chat, or just randomly online. So let's move on to the
Yeah.
next one. So I mean, that's, again, you see, they just, like you said, they they're elegant but simple, and I love that look
Mhm.
on a guitar.
Mhm.
And obviously the woods you're using, the woods you're using are just out of this world. I mean, where do you get them from, and what kind of wood is that on this one?
That's a Brazilian rosewood,
Wow.
and I get my wood sourced basically from everywhere.
Mm.
It could be from as close as doing a Craigslist. Sometimes they have
Really?
somebody say, I have some wood in my garage and you just go check it out. And, they have
Wow.
some stuff. But, because I don't,
But not
so
that,
it's
right?
kind
Not
of,
that piece, not that wood.
right. That one actually came from a good friend who used to, have a lot of Brazilian rosewood. So he supplied me some of those sets in my early days, and he's now sort of out of the business because he ran out of the stuff. So all the stuff
Mm.
that I have is basically all I have, and I don't think I'll be able to get any more. And then for the soundboards, I have better reliable source on that is like companies in Switzerland, Italy,
Mm.
Italy, Germany, as well as here. I have some source for Adirondack spruce tops, and for back end sides because a lot of them come from like South America, Central America, or Africa. I just have to really reach out to a lot of the suppliers and then see if they have anything. But often I try to get the wood guys. We call it wood guys, and who could sort of supply the good stuff to the luthier. So it's yeah, and I don't haggle with the prices on that because they know what they're worth. I know what they're worth. So when they give me a reasonable price, I just pay for it if I could afford, and that's how I get them. On that guitar, if you look at it, I don't know if you can tell right away, but this guitar has a tapered body, and I call it a subtle Manzer wedge.
Mm.
And guitar maker Linda Menzer in Canada, and she's been building guitars for about 50 years. Her
Mm.
guitars are played by people like Pat Metheny, uh, Paul Simon, and some of these really high-profile guitar players. Uh, she's also a one-person guitar maker, and she came up with this taper body, and she called it a wedge. And that her wedge is a little bit more um, severe in angle, and what it does
Mm.
is you get a much thinner body on the bass side where you play, and as you go up to the treble side, it's offset so that you get a deeper body there. And what it's allowing to do is first for your ergonomic uh, sort of purposes, but it also allows for the body to get more air resonance in the body. So you're kind of offsetting it, and I think it adds a little bit more complexity in the overtone, and but it's really comfortable. So I apply that,
Mm.
and of course with her gracious permission, I apply that on my guitars. So the treble side is thicker, and then it sort of tapers down to the bass side.
Yeah, it looks amazing. I mean, obviously with Brazilian rosewood, there's different levels of it. Like all wood, some wood looks better than others. Do you think have I? No, I've never owned a Brazilian rosewood guitar. For you, is that like the gold standard? Like, is it amazing, next level sounding wood, or is it? Do you think it's mostly that you can't get it anymore, that it's so sought after?
In my limited experience, I think there is something really special about Brazilian rosewood.
Mm,
And it also, I mean, with any wood, it really comes down to how a builder utilizes that wood
mm,
to bring the maximum musicality out of it. And so, given that I'm sort of approaching it the same method, if I use Brazilian rosewood versus the other, I find the Brazilian rosewood just adds a lot more of a lush and musicality, that the bell-like overtone to the guitar than the other. And I feel like there's alternative wood that sound incredible. They're still very good, but just kind of if you push me to the edge and say, hey, even then, like, what is that sort of that like the best, or like rosewood sounding?
mm,
I think Brazilian rosewood just has uh, that bell-like sound that I think is really special.
mm.
Um, but there are, like I said, there are alternative wood that still gets very, very close to that, and I think, yeah. So
So how do you know, like you find some Brazilian rosewood? How do you know before you build a guitar that it's going to sound the way you want it to sound? Are there ways to figure that out before you make the guitar?
I listen to the sound of the tap tone, and
Mm,
there's a lot of conversation that I've seen about tap. Does tap tone tell anything about the instrument that it will be built? And I think it depends on what you're listening for. I'm not listening for that particular pitch because that changes as I adjust the thickness of the plate. But what I'm listening for is the dryness of the wood and the musicality. When I tap on it, I want to hear the musicality and the like the quality, like it's the color of the sound, if that makes sense. That I'm hearing
mm,
for, listening for, and I think because back and sides contribute to the the color of that tone, and then top is what drives all of that. So I could only imagine. So when I'm talking to my clients, what I do is I put all of those information and I listen to the wood, and then I sort of imagine, and that's sort of my sound design process. And when it's built into the guitar, then I would ultimately know, okay, did I achieve that goal or did I miss it? And I mean, until now, my clients have been happy, so thankfully, I guess that's okay. And of course, I know I still, can't fully comprehend what it's gonna sound like, because it's a sound. It's like, eating
Right, of
food. It's
course,
like,
yeah.
what does that butter taste like? Well, like, I can describe it to a certain degree, but I could only imagine. So I
Well,
think
you must have a talent for it then, because to make this many guitars and get it right. But that's what it's about, isn't it? Again, I go back to the whole factory guitar thing. They can't do that level of detail. They just have to make a guitar, and that's why I always tell people you need to play them, because they all sound different. But then when you're making one guitar and you can really hone in on what you want it to be, even the way you voice it and things that other. I mean, this is whole next level stuff, and I'm this is a very. I'm seeing some names pop up in the chat, and I'm thinking this is a very dangerous conversation today, because I can see a lot of my friends watch this video and be like, "Yeah, that's a whole new level of guitar addiction." Like when you actually go into a
Mhm.
custom one-off, fully how I mean, this is whole next level stuff, and maybe I never should have got into this world of guitar building, because it could be very expensive.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. Like it looks amazing, and hearing you talk about it
Mhm.
is just it's a real one-off. It's a work of art, isn't it? So not to discount, not to discount the other builders that make all those guitars, and that you get amazing guitars. And like you said, you never really know how it's going to work out. But
Right. I mean,
it's just amazing to hear someone talk about, I find the wood, and the wood might come from Craigslist. It might come from the biggest dealer in the world, and it's just about how I craft that into what the client wants. I guess the biggest thing then is you've got to make sure the client needs to make sure that they actually know what they want. I mean, I've spent many years buying hundreds of guitars because I didn't really know, I don't really know what I want. I just like trying guitars out. So you've got to know exactly going into this what you want from the instrument, right?
Yeah, and typically, I mean, at this point, I find that, talk to my clients for a little bit and hearing about their playing style, what they like to play, I could sort of get an idea for what kind of guitar to build for my clients. So if they have a lighter touch, then I like to maybe use like Italian spruce top over some Spicci. And if they have more of a heavy touch with the strumming, then I would probably lean toward German spruce or Adirondack spruce. Um, and so it's, now that I've built a few guitars, I feel like there's a little bit, I get closer to be able to serve. But most of my clients, they haven't even played my guitar when they ordered it. So
I know
it's
that's
like,
a scary thing, and then you've got to
yeah,
wait for it as well.
yeah, and then they gotta wait like, like 5 years, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's like at this point, like I don't. It's not even about meeting the expectation. It's like I have to exceed the expectation.
Wait,
Like
you
they
said
have to be
5?
just,
You said 5 years?
yeah. So I've closed my waiting list like several years ago because I couldn't take anymore. I mean, it was getting
Wow.
really getting really out. So if I catch up to a reasonable time frame now, it'll be like 2029 when I can start a new guitar.
Oh wow! I mean, it makes sense because it obviously makes sense because it's just you and your stuff is so great. But yeah, I hope I didn't get any hate emails tonight. Hey, you slowed him down building my guitar.
No.
But no, well, yeah, okay. Let's go through some more, and then we'll move on to questions from the viewers. But obviously this wood here is different, right? On the back of this one.
Yes, that's the one. That's the same set that you saw from the NAMM show, but just a different model. So that's
Mm.
another one of my guitars that I've exhibited at NAMM 2020, or that I was gonna, and then I think COVID hit. I think, yeah,
No,
I forget the time
we
frame.
had Nam, and then we had COVID like 2 months
Mhm.
later. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. So this guitar is made from the tree mahogany,
Mm.
uh, and that is sort of like the one of the most prized woods right now in the guitar and the woodworking scene. And it's an Honduran rosewood, but the figure that has it is pretty exquisite. And that's my OM. So that's the guitar that I made from it. And if you'd like to know more about it, I can tell about the wood as well.
Um, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're going to need about 30 minutes for the viewers' questions. So if you're
Mhm.
happy to go on for like another hour from now, then that's fine.
Okay.
I don't want to slow you down. I feel guilty now. Like you've got such a long
No,
waiting list.
no.
Like you should be
Yeah.
building guitars.
No.
And
So this.
let me just throw a question in there about that because I'm sure it's going to
Yeah.
come up. Have you considered adding someone else to help you build the guitars, or is that not a direction you want to go in?
Uh, it's really not the direction that I want to go in. Maybe
Hmm.
in my later years, if I feel like I need more help, then I probably would. And but I also do believe in sort of contributing my uh, sort of time and knowledge to someone else. And I've actually kind of done that or I've done that in the like last 7 years teaching at guitar making school.
Hmm.
And so, but for my own work right now, I want to sort of, do it myself. And then maybe when I turn, I don't know, 50 or 60, if I feel like one, then I could uh, consider it. But
Yeah,
I kind of have a problem of, wanting to make sure that everything is still done under my own control. So
yeah.
because
No, it makes
I don't know
sense.
what I'm, oh, probably because I don't know what I'm doing. I just have to learn to figure it
No, no,
myself.
no. No, it makes sense. That's why you do this way, and I'm sure your customers, clients love it too, right? Because they know it's just you that's made the guitar. There's something amazing about that. So yeah, please tell us. I mean, this is an amazing piece of wood. People used to tell me that straight grain wood is the best sounding, and then lately we're seeing a lot of what was it? Like what more like wavy and different wood.
Yeah, like
So yeah,
a
so
flame.
what's flamed? Yeah. So what's the story behind this piece?
So this comes from a one tree back. It's like 14 feet wide in diameter and 125 feet tall, and it was found in Belize in the 60s. So there was a group of wood hunters in the 60s. They went and hunted down the tree, and they didn't really have a chainsaw. They used, because it was so big, they used an axe. They just kind of went and went and went, and they didn't really have a way to control where it was going to fall, but it ended up falling behind a ravine. So they couldn't really retrieve it because it's such a big tree. Um, so about 10 years later, uh, the American woodworker, I forget his first name, but Novak, he got the leads, and he's also like a wood sort of import exporter. So he got the lead from the locals, and he went and basically purchased this wood in the ravine, and he went back to California, got a custom chainsaw made to cut this wood into manageable sizes, and then he brought them all down, and then he opened it up, and all of a sudden he was like, whoa, this has got some crazy figure in it, like all this tortoiseshell figure. And he
Mm.
started importing into Northern California, where he's from, and it started to get used in the high-end furniture industry in the 80s and 90s. And of course, guitar world picked it up, and they either reclaim or salvage the wood, and or if they find any remaining boards, they can use it. So because of this crazy story with adding to the crazy figure, also the wood being very old, it just yielded some of the most amazing guitar woods. So it's basically the same Honduran rosewood, but on a steroid, because you got all this
Mm.
sort of different density kind of going through. It's like, orchestra or choir with different voices of the big guys and the small guys, but it's all adding to the mix. And the how I got the wood is also, like some of the things you asked about, where do you get your wood? It was like, oh well, there are suppliers who have this wood, but I wasn't really, I mean, I couldn't afford any of this wood. But what had happened was I got an email from a monk in a yoga temple in Santa Rosa saying, I have this big table that we had it in our temple for like past several years. And the story turns out that they had a woodworker who wanted to purchase the table, but he couldn't afford it. So he had temple to purchase it, and then said, I'm going to come and purchase it back from you. But he never got around to it. So the table has been just sitting in there for many years, and they just want to get rid of it at some point. So they reached out to a few guitar makers by Google search, because he didn't know anything about guitars.
Mm.
And my name came up, and I was the first one to respond. And I just drove up there. I stayed at the temple for a few days, just hanging out after I purchased it, and ended up getting the table. I spent about a
Mm.
month to really lay out everything where I wanted to cut. Took it to my local person who could resaw these big pieces of wood. And I typically do all my resaw in house, but because it's such a precious material, I didn't want to sort of make any mistake or
Mm.
waste anything. So he was able to sort of help me through the whole resawing process. I think it was 10 feet long by 4 feet wide and about an inch thick. And of course, I had to work around, because it was a table, work around some table, the biscuits and like holes. But yeah, so that set is that you see on the guitar is from that table.
So we don't think about that. We just assume it's a tree that becomes a
Uh-huh.
guitar, but it may have been any. And then there's even more stories behind it. There's a builder here actually in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
She's been like getting pieces of wood from venues and places around the city.
Is that
And
the Kelly guitars?
oh, yes,
Cindy
yes,
Kelly guitar?
Cindy,
Yeah.
Cindy, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and I've seen that from. Fender did it too. They were building some guitars from parts of a stage, and someone at the show had Hendrix. He was on the live stream, built something from Hendrix stuff, furniture. Yeah, so we forget that. Well, I do. I always think, oh, it was a tree that became a guitar, but no, it may have been that table has a lot of stories, right, as well, and then it
Yeah.
became a
I don't know
guitar.
if you can. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, here.
Well, I'll put you on full screen. 1 second.
Okay.
So that's the table. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
You could almost make a like a YouTube channel based around the stories of, like, we could call it wood stories, because all the, the story of how you get each piece of wood is amazing. Whether it's from Craigslist or a table from it's that just that story alone is amazing. And again, I don't think about that stuff. I just think, oh, it was a tree and he made a guitar. No, and
It's yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, there's some really fun stories involving wood. Getting wood purchasing or hunting. I mean, I had some
yeah.
like a mushroom koa. I got a lead from this guy, and I go to his shed, and he's been collecting this wood for like 40 years. And I pick up this piece of like big board of koa and had mushroom on it. It's like it oxidated so much that it just like grew on it, and then I had to.
That's the mushroom guitar.
Yeah.
So is this the same guitar that we saw in the first picture, the OM?
No, it's a different guitar.
Okay.
And that's the same guitar from the previous one. And that's an inlay from my mentor's daughter, who's a professional full-time inlay artist. So her name is Jimmy Wingert, and
Okay.
she's done some of the most incredible artistic inlay for her mom, Kathy, and the companies like Santa Cruz. She's done several really cool projects for Santa Cruz and many other guitar makers, and that's that's my tribute to Kathy, because that actually was a design that went on Kathy's guitar, and it's a tribute to her guitar, and so that's like a descending dove on that.
I'm just looking because I don't want to say their name in case they don't want me to, but I was talking to someone at the show who was telling me they do inlay. There's a couple of companies that do inlay, and they were telling me they've done some inlay, and I was talking about a fretboard that I bought on eBay, and from a John. I talk a lot on the channel about John Mayer and the John Mayer signature guitars, and she told me that the company had done that inlay on that fretboard, and again, it's just such a small world. And again, I didn't realize that, for example, Martin don't do the inlay in house. They have people do it and send it back, and they put it on the guitar. So it's the same for you, right? You don't, like you just said, you don't do the inlay yourself. So do you prepare the fretboard and then send it to someone to have the inlay work done? Is that how it works for you as well?
Yeah, because I don't often do inlays, and when I get requests from clients because it has some special sentimental values to it, then I collaborate with an inlay artist that I feel like suitable for that project. So that's my preferred method of going. And anything simple inlays, I do it on my guitars, but anything that really requires the artistic eye to not just do the work, but also be able to select the material and for that particular line and the color curves, it really involves the right eye to see all the shells, because shells reflect all different ways and they have different figure. And just like I know how to look at wood for guitar, where it should go, inlay artists have an eye to look at what would be the right piece for that wing, right piece for that tail, right piece for that legs, things like that. So
yeah. And what? Sorry, just tell me again. What was the name of the person that you said there was a tribute to?
her name is Jimmy Wingert.
Okay, that might be a different person, but it's
Yeah.
I didn't see. I didn't know this. Again, there's very few people that do that in the guitar world, and they do it for everyone. And yeah, again, the great thing about NAMM, you meet people that you would never meet people outside
Mhm.
like that. You know, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
and I think the person you met at NAM who did all the inlay for PRS is Jamie Olson. Olson inlay.
Well, I don't want to say because they might not want me to say, so I'm not going to
Oh,
say. But maybe it was. Yeah, maybe it was. But yeah, I love talking to them, and because yeah, the reason I say that is I was showing them this fretboard that
mm,
someone went. You can go to Martin and buy pieces of wood to make your own guitar, and
hmm
someone picked up these fretboards that were from the John Mayer guitars, and
mm,
I didn't know if it was 100% the real deal. And then
hmm
because they did that original inlay, she said to me, "Yeah, that's one of ours," and that was just really cool. All that
mm,
random stuff coming together, you know. But yeah, and I also didn't know. I guess I knew, but I didn't never thought about the fact that companies like Martin and Taylor send stuff out to have that done, and it comes back. They put it on the guitar,
mm,
and it's just a whole nother level of detail. But
hmm
yeah, that's awesome. And then I'll just keep going here. So what
Yeah,
about that? So that inlay there, is that done by someone or is that done by yourself, like in
that's
the
done
end
by
piece there?
that's done by me. That's
So you
done.
do that,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And what kind of wood is that?
That's also a Brazilian rosewood, but it had this some
Nice.
crazy flames. I called it a black flame Brazilian
Mm,
rosewood.
wow.
And what I like to do on my instrument is to really tie in all the design elements to the guitar. So if
Yeah.
you look at the fingerboard, there's some sort of lines going in through the fingerboard, and then I wanted to extend it to the end, the butt joint.
Mm,
Um, and then the materials that I like to use for the headstock to the back end sides, I like to sort of use all the tying in materials so that they flow easy and smooth to my eyes.
yeah. No, yeah, I love it. I love the way the headstock matches the body, but it's not overly ornate, but it's not under ornate. It's just right, you know. It's just so some guitars are just too much,
Mhm.
and you know some people do that because they can, and then some guitars are kind of too plain. But this is like a really nice balance, isn't it, with the back and then the neck and the headstock all tying in together. Yes,
Mhm.
that's I love that. And there's the inlay again,
Mhm.
and let's go. So is that the same one? That's the Brazilian.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, you see, I wouldn't know that was Brazilian. Again, all wood can look so different.
Yeah.
And then is this a different one again? Different
It's a
guitar?
different one. Yes, and that's my modified Venetian cutaway.
Hmm.
So they're different than the Uchida Bandaway, and that's a Cocobolo.
And that's way more, yeah, more of an aggressive kind of colorway. Obviously, you can see there.
Hmm
Okay. Uh, what kind of cases do you prefer to use, or do you have a preference?
Uh, right now I'm using Colton cases.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
there's another one that I use that's made in Thailand called Visus Nut case.
I've not heard of them.
And they are one of the lightest cases, but very strong.
Hmm.
It's made out of this special ABS plastic. And
Hmm.
what's good about it is it's got a custom fit where my Colton case is custom fit with the fabric and all that. Whereas the Visus Nut has more like you can you pull a little bit of there's a little bell you can pull from the compartment and it sort of fits it into the shape of the guitar. So
Hmm.
you can just readily pick it up and then custom fit it, uh, when you get it.
So this is interesting on the screen because it's more of a bevel than a colorway, right?
Yes, so that's the Uchida style bend away
Yeah.
where you
Oh,
see
okay,
that
okay.
twist. Hmm
That's a better angle to see it from. Yeah. Yeah, so
Yes.
that's really interesting. So the hand just kind of sits there on the bevel
hmm
rather than cutting away a part of the guitar. Yeah,
hmm
nice. Yeah, I like that. I've never seen that before. I mean, look at that. That's just like a painting, isn't it? You got great photographs as well,
Thank you. Thank you.
which is obviously very important. You know, you want to make a guitar like this and take pictures with your old cell phone.
Yeah.
Tuners, have you got preferences on tuners and ratio? Do you think about ratio and things like that, or you just use what looks right on the guitar?
My preferred tuners on my guitars is Goto 510, 18:1 ratio, because that just feels the most natural to me. 21 is like, oh, you got to turn a little more. 16 is a
Mm.
little bit rough. 18 is the right spot. Uh, and HAP, height adjustable post.
Mm.
And that comes, I get it custom ordered from Japan, and it allows me to adjust the height of the post on each tuner.
Wow.
So
For the break
that
angle.
gives me, yes, that gives me
Mm.
the ability to adjust it. So if I'm doing like a DAD or drop D tuning, it still retains that extra umph to the on the strings. So and that's also the weight of the tuner is like a really nice balance to my
Mm.
instruments. So they're not too heavy, they're not too light, but it's just like a right fit.
All right, great. Well, I'm glad we went through the photographs, and then I think we should go over and take people's questions now because we've been talking for a while. But yeah,
Yeah.
just really fascinating. I'm sure we've answered some of the questions anyway, but I'll just bring them up on the screen. So now's your chance, everyone. Just quickly, if you're new here, please do me a favor, subscribe and ring the bell. It really helps me out. And please feel free to put your questions in there. We'll go through them once we get to the end of the questions. We'll wrap things up. This video will be up to watch again, so you can watch it back if you missed the start or anything like that. So I'll come back to the top of the chat now. All right, let's just go through these then. So T is here. Good to see you, T. I think T may have been the person that was talking about it when we were live about the guitars. But question is, what are your thoughts on dovetail and mortise and tenon neck joints? And actually, I'll add to that, what kind of neck joint do you use on your guitars?
I use the traditional dovetail. My construction philosophy always has been, if someone were to take apart my guitar from 100 years from now on, I want, and it would, anyone who couldn't do the Martin repair would still be able to do that. So I use hide glue, nitrocellulose lacquer, dovetail neck joint, sort of that nature. And to answer your question on dovetail and the bolt-on mortise and tenon, uh, it's a percentage thing, right? So does that make any difference? It could, and sometimes it could not. I use dovetail because that's what I feel comfortable. Because I also come from repairing a lot of Martin guitars and Gibsons, and I feel pretty comfortable using it. And it's for me, it's not having to add an additional bolt in my guitar, but I've seen many great, incredible sounding bolt-on guitars, and so there's really no. Uh, I don't see that as necessarily a disadvantage, but it gives more of that easier access for any servicing in the future compared to dovetail. And many of the makers who could actually, who can control. I mean, they can control the factors. So I think it's sort of like a minor detail on that percentage. So. Um, I'm open to that idea, but I just personally use Dovetail because,
Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
yeah, yeah,
No, I was just going to say, I see more people moving. I mean, look, Martin started doing the bolt-on. They say with the SC guitar it's not a bolt-on, but it is. You can adjust it. You don't need to do a neck reset. But again, I guess they're doing that because they want the guitars to be easily adjustable by the customer. Maybe it's easier to make them in production. So you're doing the full dovetail. So does that mean, I've never had it done, but I guess that means that down the line your client will have to have a neck reset done. What are your thoughts on that? I always think that's such a big deal, but I mean, I'm sure you've done them
yeah,
yourself, done many yourself.
yes, yeah. So usually the neck reset is needed when your breaking angle from the neck or the top sort of loads significantly enough that there's no more saddle left.
Mm.
So when I set the geometry on my neck, I set it so that it will sort of compensate for some of that issue down the line. And as long as I'm practicing as a guitar maker, I'm standing behind all my work. So if that ever becomes an issue, I can just handle it myself.
Hmm.
Um, and there are several versions of bolt-on you will see on the market. The companies like Taylor is like full bolt-on where you have the bolt from the neck joint as well as under the fingerboard extension. And some of the Martins that I've worked on before were kind of the hybrid. You have
Hmm.
the bolt-on neck joint, but your fingerboard's been glued on. And oftentimes that glue somehow makes it to the neck joint so that sometimes you can't even make that loose just by the bolt. You kind of have to like
Hmm.
steam it out still
Hmm.
regardless of it. It might have been changed now, but there are many models that are out there. So that's really not necessarily the easiest to adjust in my experience. The tailors are on the other hand, it's really easy to just reset, adjust the neck angle. Some things that I've noticed with bolt-on, probably the only drawback that I've probably found is that as the time passes, the wood expands and contracts. It the bolt could become loose. So every year or
Hmm.
two, sometimes you might have to like retighten some of the bolts because they
Good point.
just become loose and then rattle with the washer in it. So, but other than that, I think there's a great advantage in doing it. And I'm just kind of liking sticking to the old school, so I just do my bolt on and
Hmm.
dovetail neck joint myself.
Well, like everything, there's pros and cons to everything, right? And I think sometimes we
Mm-hmm.
forget about the other side of it. Like adjustability
Mm-hmm.
is great, but like you said, that can also come loose and have other problems, etc., etc. But yeah, that's great. All right, so find the next one here. Uh, okay, thoughts on glue? Hide glue, fish glue, wood glue. What kind of glue do you
Mm-hmm.
use, and what are your thoughts on that?
I use hot glue on majority of my process, and that's also kind of sticking to the tradition. But I also use normal wood glue, not so much fish glue. So high glue has when high glue dries, cures, they pull, and it's a more of a molecular bond. Whereas the Tide Bond, it's the glue itself, it's aliphatic resin, so it sort of slightly puffs up and but it sticks really well. So, but it also has a tendency to have a little bit more of a creep than high glue. I haven't seen that issue in many years, but if you look at some of the '70s Martin, you'll see like a bridge would kind of get creep up and then sort of uh, create a snow plow on in front of the lacquer, in front of the bridge on lacquer,
Hmm.
and but that's sort of like really more of a long term issue. Um, but personally, I think high glue um, ages better with the instrument, and that's probably why it's been uh, the choice of glue for many years. And also, it dries crystal hard, so I think that could also contribute to some of the sound. So yeah, for my work, for gluing braces, binding, rosette, neck joint, bridge, I prefer to use that method. But it's you just have to get used to using it. Yeah.
Derek's got a question about when you started. This reminds me of the question they asked songwriters, like how many songs did you write before you
Uh-huh.
had a hit kind of thing. So,
Uh-huh.
how many guitars, like when you first started building, well, you were apprenticing, right? But
Right.
when you actually built your first full guitars, at what point were you
Mhm.
like, this is ready to go out into the world? And did you have any experiences with the first ones where you had to change things or?
Mhm. Uh, Thankfully, uh, because during my apprenticeship years, um, I feel like I've sort of saw all the things that
Mm.
that I could make mistake on and improve on. So before I started my first guitar for sale, I've probably avoided a lot of those issues by
Mm.
just being training under my mentor. Um, and I think probably that's why it took me like 7 or 8 years to even get started to build my own guitars. And I probably had like maybe a couple of the prototypes that I built, but that's about it. And then when and my very first guitar, I mean, that was already on hit the market.
Mm.
Uh, but yeah, I think I tried to really dial in a lot of the factors to be out there uh, with a full force in a way.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think like Derek's question would make sense to me if you hadn't had any apprenticeship, if you just started building guitars yourself.
Hmm.
But that's the great reason to study with someone and work with someone because, like you said, you can learn from them and then avoid, avoid the mistakes as soon as you start. But you didn't just make a guitar and sell it. You made some prototypes, or was it like was it straight out the door running, or?
So I had like maybe very first one in with my mentor, and it was a prototype. So I just made a lot of mistakes, and
Mm,
then uh, there's some time has passed. From then, I think I just did my first guitar, and it was on the market. Yeah,
great,
and
great.
then I did my first exhibition with my second and third guitar back in 2015, and then those were
Mm,
already sold to my dealers.
yeah. Oh, so you work? Do you sell direct, or you work with dealers, or both? Even though you're
I
now
do both.
kind of booked up, you do both. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I do both.
All right. T asks about solid wood and HPL. Now, I'm pretty sure you don't use HPL, but what do you? I want to ask you this as well. What do you? I talk a lot lately about carbon fiber, alternative
Hmm.
woods. A lot of companies now are using maple and different kind of woods that we're seeing. So
Hmm.
you've shown us some amazing. Obviously, you've shown us some amazing Brazilian rosewood and things like that.
Hmm.
But what are your thoughts on these other alternative kind of woods?
Uh, I use solid wood, and for my sides, I use double sides, so I laminate the sides for stability.
Mm,
But the high HPL, the high pressure laminate, that's probably the you're referring to the Martin's versions of like a thin papers, but they just get pressured and glued
mm,
into pieces.
yeah.
I think they are more cost effective, and I think they can result in really cool guitars. I mean, I think even just that name, I think you've probably seen like the HPL version, but with the photograph of a Brazilian rosewood.
Yeah, the new import line where they're
Uh-huh.
well that yeah, they got like the picture, but they've got the Mamaki printer now where they're actually printing the wood.
Hmm.
They don't use that on those guitars, but on some of their
Hmm.
like custom shop level and factory guitars, they're actually printing on to look like
Hmm.
other kinds of wood. But again, these are issues that a builder like Martin has because they need massive amounts of wood,
Hmm.
right? So you don't need to work with alternative materials because you can get your hands on the good stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. So my only concern, if I were to use it though, is the aging issue,
Mm,
because guitar will sound better and more mature as it ages. With other material, it might not age. I don't know. There's uncertainty in how it
mm,
would age over the years. I
mm.
know, at least with wood, by seeing pre-war Martins and Gibsons, we know that it would sound sort of better or more resonant, more broken in as it ages. But yeah, with the other alternative material, it might have a different outcome.
The irony is I'm sitting here with a carbon fiber guitar behind my back. But that's again, everything has its place, and I'm in New
Yes.
York. The heater's blasting right now. So if
Hmm.
I had one of your guitars here, I wouldn't have it hanging behind me. I would for the live stream, but I wouldn't have it hanging behind me 24/7 like this guitar is.
Hmm. Hmm.
It has its place. But yeah, it makes sense. Like these questions are asked before we were talking, and with all those amazing stories of the different woods you've been able to get.
Hmm.
I guess you don't even need to think about that stuff. But it's good to keep a broad spectrum, and I do talk a lot on my channel about carbon fiber guitars, and
Hmm.
like I said, Martin are now doing the thing with maple, and they're doing skeletonized bracing and channeling, and it's interesting. But the Brazilian rosewood you showed me is kind of next level stuff. Yeah, definitely. And along those lines, Michael says, what tone woods combinations, like back and sides and top, are you finding the most interesting right now?
Most interesting. Interesting. What's interesting?
Or
Yeah.
what's your one of your favorite combinations of wood?
Yeah. I have been really liking Italian and Cocobolo combo. And hi, Michael. Uh, it's yeah, I think interesting as in like it will sort of intrigue me, but I think Italian or spruce top paired with Cocobolo seems to for me uh, making a really nice guitar because Italian, when I touch Italian, it has sort of that really open, clear sound. And Cocobolo being heavy, oily wood has a little bit of the mid strong sound, but pairing it up well, I think it gives like a sort of like a nice complementary to each other, and I like using that. And I have several guitars on order in that.
Mm. He also asks, what part of your building process has evolved the most over time?
Finishing.
Mm.
Yeah, I think my first probably 10 guitars, because I do my own finish using nitrocellulose lacquer. And I, I think my first 10 guitars, I was trying to really dial in some of my finishing method and thickness. And um, I spent about a week in Santa Cruz helping out with some of their warranty repair, and
Mm.
their repair shop manager, Darren Webb, and he sort of showed me different techniques. And after learning about it and sort of put that to use right away, my finish, I was able to get much thinner finish and flatter finish all across, and that really popped the sound of my instrument. Uh, from it was probably because I make very small refinements on my instruments, but
Mm.
that particular change really made that a noticeable difference in sound in a good
You know,
way.
a lot of companies now are moving towards satin finish, and I really think they're kind of following the lead of like the Australian builders, because I really like Maton and Cole Clark, and they
Hmm.
do a lot of satin finish guitars, and you're seeing now a lot of the American brands doing that too, moving. And in fact, PRS just released a new SE guitar yesterday, electric
Hmm.
guitar, which is satin finish, and again, obviously that's a way to save money, right? Because you're not
Hmm.
applying the finish to the guitar. But I do think it's interesting that more and more guitars now are moving, even the higher end guitars are moving to satin finish. Have you done it? Have you done a satin finish guitar, or is that not something you would do?
Not on a full body, but on the neck, just for the
Mm,
feel of it. But satins, it can be a little tricky because over time, anywhere you rub it against will
yeah,
become kind of
gloss.
shiny. So yeah, so that's probably, I mean, for that reason, I just, and I like, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse, right? With the shiny, like gloss. I mean, you're always chasing after some things, but I just, with the high end world, I think people still like the shiny bling, everything sort of reflecting.
Mm.
And if it's done, yeah, if it's done right, I think it'll look good.
There's a guy I know, Scott. He was talking about Cole Clark guitars once, and he said the satin over time turns to gloss, and then on his gloss guitar, the gloss turns to satin, which is a good way to look at it. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. We see your tools behind you? Have you got a specific brand that you use, or do you use multiple?
Um, I have multiple tools throughout my shop. Uh, I think I mean StuMac is some of the tools that I use. I use a lot of like Japanese tools for cutting tools, right? Saw and chisels, and then some of the stuff I just make, like some scrapers
Mm,
because they have to be very specific shape. I just make it myself,
wow.
cutting out of the tool metals, and then. But if I don't have to make it, would prefer to buy it because
Mm,
now there are such a the cost isn't too high and it's usually worth it. And then there are some the measuring tools, not just for like a straight edge, but I have measuring for moisture content in the wood. I have an ultrasound tool for measuring the film thickness on the finish, and then different magnetic tools for measuring the top thickness or the plate thickness on the finished instrument. That's so different type of tools. Yeah.
It's definitely. I learned it's important to have the right tools because I bought some calipers from Amazon, and then I got the Stu Mac version that was 3 times the price, but they're so much more accurate, and they make little adjustments to make it applicable more to the guitar as well. So it just makes such a huge. Even down to silly things I was saying Monday, like when you adjust the truss rod, if you've got a really good tool with a good grip on it, it's so much easier than using like the little cheap one that they give you, with a cheap guitar. So it's having the right tools is important. And like you said, of course, we mustn't forget that you often will make your own tools for what you do because you need something very specific.
Yes.
All right, we'll keep going. We'll keep these short as we can. But does purfling affect the tone?
I probably to a certain degree, but probably a very small percentage. What I notice is when the guitar box is made, and before I cut the binding channel, meaning I have to cut a cavity around the border of the top. Before I do that, I tap on the body. It has a certain response from the sound, and then after I cut the binding, all of a sudden it sort of dunks because there's no edge. The edges are nothing much holding on to it. So that gives me an idea that maybe the way the binding material and the purfling could, but not to a significant degree where I can tell the difference. But I'm sure it adds, to a little percentage to the sound of it.
Like we said before, right? Like everything affects the sound to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Madfred Manchester, we did touch on this earlier, but says beautiful guitars. What kind of price do they sell for? If you don't mind me asking, and guessing there's a long waiting list. Well, we already said the waiting list is until, was it 2020?
29.
29. Yeah, and then pricing. I guess it all depends on the wood you're using, right? And the size of the guitar and everything.
Yes. So it's when I closed my waiting list back in 2018, I had to make a very hard decision. It was a very difficult decision and scary to not lock in the prices when the order is placed. So I fully disclose to my customers when they show an interest in my work is that there's a very long wait list, and then also the price will be reflected on the year that I will start the guitar or the year
it makes sense.
It is to be delivered because I just I don't want to be locked in with the old price when my guitars are more. So, but for this year's current pricing, the average price is somewhere between like $25,000 to $35,000.
Yeah, and depending on the spec and everything else, right?
That's right.
What I realized the other month was that the size of the guitar doesn't make a difference. For example, a kind of Turs guitar from Martin Custom Shop, like the little tiny almost ukulele guitar, is the same price as the Dreadnought because you're not paying for the size of the guitar or the amount of wood. You're paying for the time, and the guitars take the same amount of time to make. So that's something I hadn't thought about myself before. Rosanna said your guitars are beautiful. Thanks, Rosanna.
Thank you.
We all agree, I'm sure. I do. Do you get attached to guitars you've built? That's a great question.
Of course.
Are you sad when they go?
It's like, oh, my baby, I spent several months. I mean, I probably spent more time here in my shop than I spend at home.
But it's your job. It's your job, and you have to sell them to pay. This is a job, right? You're paying the bills.
Right. So I get attached, but then when I do see the paycheck, I'm like, well, sure.
Yeah, when the lights start turning off, you're okay with it. No, I get it though. You spent so much time, but also it must be an amazing feeling that the guitars are going out to perform. I'm sure you've made guitars for famous people and people that are touring and recording albums, and to think that your instruments are on those is. I mean, you mentioned Tommy. I was going to ask you more about Tommy earlier. You mentioned Tommy Emmanuel. Like, I'm a huge fan. He's
Yeah.
my one of my guitar idols. I've met him several times. I've been to his workshops and his concerts and his meet and greets, and so I've
Mhm.
seen him at Summer NAMM. And I saw on Instagram he posted on one of your posts as well. I
Mm.
presume he's played your guitars, right?
I mean, probably my prototype, because I mean, I haven't really
Mm.
spent much time with Tommy since, like, I did some tech for him back in like 2011, 9 and 2011.
Oh, so that was before you
So
were building the guitars.
that was before I was launched my guitar brand, right, right. So
Mm.
I
Mm.
was still apprenticing, and it was because my fandom that really kind of got me to say volunteer for teching for him. He's like, can I just tech for you?
That's great,
And then his manager then, Gina, and
Gina.
she
Yeah.
was yeah, and she was just incredible. She was like, yeah, just come on. And then Tom and I just showed up, and yeah, I got to spend time with Tommy, and got to check out, look at some guitars, do some restringing and stuff like that. So when I showed him my guitar, yeah, he got to play it. I think it's so old that I don't think I even have it on my computer.
I'd be nervous to do that because when I've seen his workshops, he's so like, particularly like he'll restring the guitar, he'll stretch them in, he'll play them. He's got such a hard attack, and he'll play them in, and he'll adjust his truss rod. And I just feel like he knows, he does it himself a lot of the time. I'd be nervous
Yeah.
to hand him a guitar and say, I've just restrung your guitar.
Well,
Tommy.
sometimes ignorance is a bliss. So I just showed up. Like, oh, okay.
And is it true that he has? He's very generous. He lets people play his guitar. I wish I did that, because sometimes I think about the action on my guitars, and I think, oh, I need to make it lower, and I play a friend's and it's higher. Everyone says that Tommy's is super low, and
Yes.
and I totally get that, because the way he plays, he's like an athlete, right? And he's also got that amazing technique where he can control what he's doing, and but yeah, did you do? What were you basically restringing it and cleaning it, or did you actually do any work on the actual guitar itself?
No, it was mostly like restringing, cleaning the stuff, and then
Okay.
sort of, inspect anything that was happening. But he's already got Joe Glazer in Nashville to
Mm,
look after his guitars, and
yeah.
Joe is an incredible. He's a great friend, and he's an incredible shop there. Um,
Mm,
and like you said, Tommy's actions are probably like an electric guitar
mm,
height, but he's got an incredible control. Like
mm,
what you see on the screen, where he
mm,
goes real hard attack, he's got it all like just in
mm.
his touches. It's all under control, and like
Yeah.
he's super light in
Mm,
reality, but it just looks very yeah,
mm.
high action. Mhm.
Yeah, no, I always think when I for what I do, I play 3 hour long gigs, and I'm not playing to that
Mhm.
level, and I'm doing a lot of
Mhm.
covers and I sing, but like even when I'm doing the solo stuff and the fingerstyle stuff, like I always think that players like him always say, set it for what you're doing, like set that stage guitar to be low for the gig, don't set it like you would set the guitar you're recording with, and I think that's great advice. Um, so Boomer says, does the sandhole smell amazing on a Brazilian rosewood guitar? He's asking this question because I have a thing on my channel about smelling. Like, okay, when you buy a Martin guitar and open the case,
Mhm.
that a new Martin guitar has this amazing smell, and we
Mhm.
believe it's from the cedar purfling of the guitar. And
Yeah.
so he's referencing that. He's assuming that a Brazilian rosewood guitar would smell even better. Now you say that, and I'm sure you're kidding here, Boomer. But the thing is that some guitars don't smell that good. Actually, some Martins don't smell that good. Gibsons have their own smell. It's really a combination of the finish, isn't it? The finish, the glues, the woods. But there's
Mhm.
definitely something about the Martin cedar purfling that they put around the
Mhm.
guitar that I sometimes wonder if it's intentional, because it just smells so. It's you go into the guitar store, you pick one up, and it smells great, But
Yeah, that
So yeah,
It's sort of,
how do your guitars smell? I guess he's asking.
yeah, I've been sort of on that thought train for some time because when I smell a guitar, it every guitar smells a little bit different from builder to builder. So that kind of
Oh.
tells me that it could also be some of the shop smell that's been picked up.
I didn't think of that.
Um, and it could be the combination of, like you said, some finish. It could be like a case has some of the fabric and the
Yep.
adhesive that sort of sort of tacks on it. So I'm still trying to figure that out. But with cedar being such a fragment wood, I think that has a lot to do with that on the Martin guitars. But on a normal guitars, I am not sure.
That's true. Like with the Gibson, I often think it's the case they use. The case has a smell, and then that
Hmm.
transfers to the guitar. Gary says, "What are the best available alternatives to Brazilian rosewood? And do you have a preference of various mahogany?" Yeah, because there's so many different kinds of mahogany species that people talk about. So there's two questions there.
Yeah. So best alternative to Brazilian in rosewood family, I would say Madagascar has been like this top choice. They used to call it a poor man's Brazilian, but it is no longer that in that if you look at the price point on that. But Madagascar has probably the closest to Brazilian in its attributes and uh, the preference of various mahogany species. Yes, I have Cuban mahogany that I like, as well as uh, Sapali is a little bit more stringy. It's a little bit harder than Honduran, like in terms of like my working ability. Honduran is easier to work with, um, but Sapali is probably the other species that I would use if mahogany wasn't an option. Um, so and
We we
maybe a co.
sometimes we sometimes forget that, like, people talk about mahogany, and there's so many different versions of
Hmm.
mahogany, right? And
Hmm.
same with rosewood, and yeah, like you were saying, I think, but you say Madagascar
Hmm.
rosewood, is it? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I had I sold it now, but I had one of those Martin authentic guitars, and they'd used that wood, and then I heard they were running out of that wood, and they've now moved to another kind of wood,
Hmm.
and yeah, it's just this endless chase with that stuff. Lee says, and again, Lee, thanks for moderating today. Do you use any CA glue in your guitars?
Yes. For my side dots, when I insert the mother of pearl dots in there, I use very thin super glue, as well as stabilizing. I go through multiple stabilizing uh, the process for my backs. So when they're sort of in the raw form, I flood the whole back with thin super glue to let it absorb and stabilize any cracks if there is any, or um, just to reinforce that back. And then I sand it back and scrape it back to that. Um, and then I think that's about it. And then, like, if there's like a small things I need to just glue pieces together real quick, that's
Hmm.
what I like to use it for.
What do you think about we spoke about the back and sides? What do you think about guitars that have the same back and sides, like all mahogany on back and sides and top, and all mahogany? Have you done guitars like that, or you always use different wood for the top and the back and sides?
I haven't done a full mahogany top, back, and sides, but I think it'll still. I think it'll make a great guitar because I mean I played many of the like those 0017 from Martins from different
Yeah.
era, and they sounded great.
Mm.
I just haven't had that opportunity to build one because a lot of my clients like to get the spruce
Mm.
because of there's a sonic quality that spruce offers
Yeah.
than mahogany. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the classic.
Mhm.
Um, John says, "Thanks, Aaron. This is great." No, thank you to Isaac, and thanks to everyone watching. Because I always say there's no show if people don't watch it. And remember, this will be on to watch again, so feel free to send it out to your friends. Um, Formerly known as T says, "Stunning looking guitars." Yep, I think we all agree
Thank
on
you.
that. That's a great question. What type of strings do you use, and does it vary between the different guitars?
I always tell my clients to play with different strings once they get it. But from my shop, when I send it out, I've been using Elixirs before, Elixir Nano Amp, but I've recently switched over to the Dario XS lights. And
That's what I use now. Yeah, I
yeah,
love
and
those strings.
yeah, it sounds like strings. Or yeah, it
Mm.
doesn't sound like the coated strings. So
Mm.
I like that.
Well, I like the elixirs, but they seem to have more tension to me than the same gauge
Hmm.
of XS. So that and
Yes.
the XS don't seem to fray quite as much as the elixirs can. But then I
Hmm.
also did try them on a Martin and didn't like them as much as the Martin
Hmm.
authentic string. So I do think there is this thing about certain guitars like certain strings, but in
Hmm.
general, especially on any stage guitar, I now go to the
Hmm.
XS. I think they're really they've knocked out the park with them. So
Yes.
it's good to hear you say you like those too. Look, okay, so look, John said perhaps I could ask you to put Martin on one of your guitars. No, I wouldn't want him to. Like I know I've told you I'm a fan of Martin guitar. I'm a fan of many different brands. But if Isaac made a guitar, I'd rather had his name on it because, like I said at the start of the show, there's something about someone making a guitar completely by hand from scratch by themselves with these woods they've sought out. I didn't want to sound earlier like I was hating on the factory built guitars at all. And sometimes you play a factory built guitar, sometimes you play a cheap guitar at Guitar Center that just blows you away and you connect with it. So I'm not a total snob with this stuff, but there's obviously something about, and I've thought about this much more since I met you at the NAM show and I was at NAM.
Hmm.
There's something magical. I'll say it.
Hmm.
Something magical about a guitar that's built over a long period of time by one person who's experienced. And the fact that you could have a call like this and say, well, here's a guitar I like, and here's some recordings I made of it. This is what I don't like about this guitar. This is what I'm using, how I'm playing it. That you're just never going to get that. Like even if you do a custom shop Martin, it's still partially made by CNC. It's still at the end of the day made in a factory, even though it's a custom shop guitar. There's something next level about a guitar that's made by someone like yourself. And to be fair to that, I haven't actually played one of your guitars. I haven't played many boutique guitars, one-off guitars at all. But even just hearing you talk about it, there's something on another level with that kind of build, and the fact that you're making them completely by hand. Again, not hating on CNC at all. It's definitely got its place. Hey, I've got a carbon fiber guitar. That thing sounds great. Everything has its place, but there's just something really amazing for people like myself and the people watching. I'm sure, like Gary's watching. I'm sure he's thinking the same thing. Like the fact that you're making it. It's you. You are the guitar, which is amazing.
Hmm.
And Lee said your guitars are not as expensive as I thought they'd be. So
Thank you.
if the price if the prices go up, it's Lee's fault. Okay, we'll do. We're not going to take any more questions. We need to wrap it up very soon. There's two more questions here before we finish. And one thing I have to ask you. I asked everyone this at the NAM show. I'm still asking people now.
Hmm.
Why do we not get stainless steel frets on acoustic guitars? Have you put them on a guitar? And why is there so much resistance? Like there's only a couple of carbon fiber brands I can think of, and that makes sense because they're carbon guitars. I have
Hmm.
a Maton Joe Robinson signature with jumbo
Hmm.
stainless steel frets,
Hmm.
and I love
Hmm.
it. And why are we not seeing these on guitars as standard, in your opinion?
Two factors. One is workability. It ruins the tool. It ruins tools, and you need different tooling for it. And second is that it, in my experience, the stainless steel sound a little bit because it's a harder material. It had a little bit more of the brittleness or maybe like a sterile sound to the instrument. But there are also, because there is an alternative to stainless steel called EVO Gold, that is made out of copper, has more of a durability and the resistance to wear, and has the warmth like the nickel silver. So I think that's the reason.
I've only tried them on that one guitar, but that guitar just sounds so good to me. And obviously, I can't, again, like we talked earlier, we can't compare a non-cutaway to a cutaway because we don't have the exact same guitar with the cutaway and without it. I haven't played a guitar with the stainless steel frets and then without the stainless steel frets, but I love the feel. People don't talk about the feel. I love the feel of them, that glassy, smooth, silky feel. And then a lot of people tell me this, and I feel the same. Like when you buy a guitar, that thought of having to have someone refret it down the line, especially like with one of your guitars. Like if I had one of your guitars and I played it all the time, and it got to the point where it needed the refret, I would want you to refret it, and I'm sure you'd be up for doing that. But then again, based around your availability and your time, I just feel like with the stainless steel, we get that longevity of the instrument. And I also play a lot of open chords, and I also play a lot of bar gigs where I'm playing those similar songs night after night. So I definitely wear through frets a lot more than other people. So I'm a little bit biased in that regard. But I just want to see it. I'm just kind of advocating for, like, I want to see this more. I want to. I don't. My personal opinion also is that with the big brands, I feel like when you wear through the frets on a guitar, I know I've in the past sold that guitar on rather than deal with the refret, and then bought another guitar. So I wonder if companies are feeling that that's a reason why they wouldn't do it. It's hard. It takes them longer. It's harder to work with, and then they will ultimately sell less guitars because the guitar will last a lot longer physically. It won't wear out. So that's my thought. But I'm just asking everyone that comes on the channel now because I want to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, well, I think in that regard, I think it could also be that public perception of stainless steel is not as highly sought after versus the nickel silver. So I think that could also be another factor. But I think it really comes down to, for bigger companies, it'll just be the cost of the extra labor and work that gets into it. And yeah, it's the tooling.
And
It's pretty.
more time as well. Yeah.
Yes.
They take longer to work with. All right. Solar says, so glad to have joined so late. Mr. Jang is one of my favorite luthiers of all time. There you go. You
thank
see?
you.
So I don't know who Solar is, but like Patsy says, you can watch this again later tonight. You can watch the whole thing back in its entirety from the beginning. So just one more question, I think, or one more comment here. So Brian, thanks for joining us. Where do you see, this is a great one to finish with, where do you see the future of acoustic guitar forum? I think you mean, let me read the whole thing. We eventually be making guitars out of carbon. Okay, yeah. So I hinted at this earlier, like with the whole alternative woods and carbon fiber. But what do you see as the future of acoustic guitar? Now, again, I guess for you, because you're working by yourself and you've got access to Brazilian rosewood, etc., you don't need to think about this as much as someone like Fender do, because they're, again, making all these guitars. But just aside from just like wood availability, do you think there's more? I mean, like, obviously the guitars we play now are so similar to what we played 100 years ago, or would have played 100 years ago. Do you think there's any is there any room for technology or changes to the way guitars are built, or do you see things staying traditional? Like, what do you think, or what would you like to see change in the future?
I think some changes are already being made and also in progress. And even though I'm a one-man operation and just doing my own thing, I also do feel like I carry some responsibility to kind of help set the trends along with my colleagues uh, in terms of making it more of a sustainable market, and also using the sustainable materials for the future of the instrument making. And I think companies like Taylor, Bob Taylor and Andy Powers, they've actually been putting a lot of the time, energy, and money into sourcing sustainability models. And I think that's probably, if we're gonna still continue with the wood as our main choice for material, I think we are gonna probably find different woods that would work with guitars, And of course, there are the technology like carbon fiber that can still, sort of take part in that solution. But I think the solution is to really finding a sustainable alternative wood for the future instruments.
Awesome. All right. So just before we go then, I'm just going to say to people, once again, if you're new here, subscribe to my channel, ring the bell. This time next week, we're doing the same thing again, but with electric guitars. And I've heard from a few other people from NAMM that might be coming on as well. So there might be more of these live streams happening. If you enjoyed them, we're going to do some more. Every Monday is the general kind of hangout and Q&A with me. And I'll be adding more during the week with different companies and builders and different things. Haven't done these since the lockdown. We did a lot of these. We had Lloyd on, Larry Fishman on, Chris Martin on. This became like a thing to do in the lockdown, but I think I'm going to bring it back because I mean, I love it. For me, it's like we're sitting on the phone having a conversation and people get to join in and ask questions. And I think it's really valuable and really cool. So just let us know then if people want to find out more about your guitars or even place an order, where do they go? What do they need to do?
My website at isaacjangguitars.com. And there's my contact information. I have my phone number, email. It's all listed there. So you can just reach me through there.
Great. And I did pin that in the chat as well. And I'll put it in the description of the video. So that's awesome. Just a few nice comments before we go. Manchester said, very informative, great show. Thanks for sharing to both of us. You're welcome. Rosanna said, thank you, Aaron, Isaac. Thoroughly enjoyed the live stream. Isaac, your guitars are beyond beautiful. There you go. And thanks to Rosanna for moderating. Thanks for your time as always, and Lee as well. Thank you both. Great show. I'll say it again. Beautiful guitars. I mean, they're undeniably beautiful, and that's the whole thing. So the only thing left for me is to play one of these days, Isaac. I need to come out there. I do want to come out sometime. Without aside from them, I want to come out and go and see Lloyd and LR Bags. So maybe sometime I'll make a trip out there. But one final question though, like you're now shipping guitars out, but like when you're building a guitar, you don't actually have a guitar there, right? Because you're building the guitar.
Exactly. It's very rare that I have a guitar of mine. Ironically, I don't have a guitar for myself yet. I'm saving up for one.
So you need to build yourself a guitar. So like if I come out there, I can actually play. So if I came out there next month, I wouldn't be able to play one of your guitars because you'd be building them, right?
Yeah, they'll all be in parts.
So that's why NAMM is so good, because you actually had, I didn't realize how lucky I was. You had two of your guitars there and I didn't play them. So I should have done that. Okay. You live and you learn.
But I'll be there at next NAMM, so.
Yeah, well, let's meet at next NAMM, and let's maybe try and find a time at NAMM next year to actually play. We could do something in a room somewhere and actually play the guitars. It is possible with a bit of planning, you know.
Right. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna let you go. It's been a 2-hour stream. I think it's been awesome. Thanks everyone for watching. Again, this is up for playing again, so watch it from the start, and I'll see you again in the next video. Isaac, thanks for your time, and keep making those awesome looking guitars. And Sandy, I know I haven't heard them, but I do want to say the sound. In fact, I did watch your YouTube channel, which I haven't mentioned. Isaac's YouTube channel has some great players playing the guitars, and what struck me about them, we keep talking about the looks because obviously we haven't got one here to play, but in the demos I've seen on your YouTube channel, they sound big, and I like that. I like guitars that sound big and full and loud, and that's what struck me watching the videos, that is the kind of sound that they get, and I want to stress that too. So I invite everyone now to go also to your YouTube channel, because I didn't play any video today. I didn't want to get a copyright claim or anything. So please also go to Isaac's YouTube channel and listen, because I feel like we've been talking about the words and the specs and the look. Go and listen to them being played on his channel and just see how impressive they are sound-wise as well. Because, of course, the sound of the guitar is very important.
Yes,
all
that's
right.
the number one part. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Isaac. It's been great talking to you. Please keep in touch and perhaps do this again sometime. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Everyone take care.
Thank you so
Have
much.
a great day.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.
the law.